Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Dane from NYYU. We'd like to welcome you to the Yankee Farm Report. Nick, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. Now, one thing that we wanted to talk about, Los has had to take a step back. He got a big promotion at his job. He's now a supervisor, which congratulations to him, but he's also remodeling his house. So he doesn't have the time to shoot with us right now. So for all the fans out there, he'll be back and we're going to see your face a whole lot more until he's back and in the future. So moving into this week in minor league baseball, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I know a big kid that we wanted to talk about was started jumping off in the FCL was Anglereth Urena. And
Yes.
I mean he's hitting almost 300. I think it's 299, 7 home runs. Jumped out. He's a catcher. I mean we've been hearing about him for a while now. He's been injured
Right.
for the last couple of years, and this year he finally has been healthy, which is always great. And he's really taken out, man. Where I feel like the Yankees have a superstar coming in the making.
Absolutely. If you look at the strikeout rate, that's below 12, 13%. The walk rate is up to about 16%. The bat speed with him is really what's impressive. And from what we have all heard from the scouts, he's pretty much a guarantee to stay behind the plate. But we also have another catcher down there that's really opening some eyes, Eaglin Perez. You've seen him coming from the DSL and the FCL. Which one of those two do you think is more of a long-term answer?
So I think that Urania is more like hitting right now, so over
Mm-hmm.
catching. Where I think as Perez is a little bit more modeled overall, where he's been looking good with the bat, but he's also a better defensive catcher.
He is.
So I think it depends on like what the Yankees are really looking for their model there. I mean, I think it's kind of like an Augustine Ramirez situation to somebody who's a little bit more of a overall rounded catcher. I like Perez. He's also, I believe, 2 years younger. So,
He is.
um, I mean, I like them both. I kind of just let it play itself out and see what happens when they both get the full season ball.
Yeah. Um, with those two emerging, both looking like very much budding prospects that could be top catching prospects, do you believe that means Augustine Ramirez is a little more movable since they already have Austin Wells at the major league level?
See, it's a hard one for me, man, because I really like Augustine Ramirez. Like I think he
So do
has
I.
a high level talent at the major league level. I think it's like a Gary Sanchez situation with like less of that you want to call lazy factor.
Right.
Um and I think that trading him, I mean I can see why you trade him, but I also don't know, I mean, what we're looking at when it comes to Jose Trevino. Yeah, I mean if we're gonna let Trevino go, I mean I would bring up Ramirez and let him play on the Yankees.
Would you? There was one opinion that I heard last week that everybody believes Wells is a primary catcher and Augustine Ramirez is a primary catcher. And it would kind of defeat the purpose having them both because they would have to basically split time. Where if you go with a guy like Carlos Narvaez and Austin Wells, Narvaez is the better pure defender. He's an elite backup at the major league level, in my opinion, especially defensively. I, they have to figure out what's going on there with those three, especially with the Trevino mix.
I mean, with Narvaez though, I think at the end of the day, I mean, although he kind of resembles what you have in Trevino, his arm is still a big suspect question. So I mean, if we're gonna have that conversation, he's got a strong arm, but it's extremely inaccurate. So
Okay.
I mean, and he's had, I believe, I saw something like he's only thrown out 5 base runners out of over 40. So that have run against him in AAA. So I mean, I wouldn't be the first person to push that, especially since we had trouble with Trevino and people running on him as well.
That's a very good point. Okay, sorry, sidetracked and then catch your conversation. Go ahead with the other kids in the FCL.
Yeah, I mean, we'll jump up to Tampa.
Okay,
I'm gonna jump up to Tampa on a couple of kids. So we're gonna talk about Lombard, man, who's come on of late as well. I know that's one of your big guys, man, but also
it is.
Rodriguez as of late has started to come on as well, and both of them are starting to look like they're starting to find out that level a little bit more. And
Yeah.
They're both exciting prospects, super exciting prospects.
Very much so. I'm a little higher on George Lombard. There's just something about that kid to me. I don't know what it is, but there's just something that you can't teach about him. But he hasn't looked good defensively. And same thing with Arias. There's a little trouble there with the errors. They're both well over 20 errors so far. Does the glove and defense give you concern for either one of them?
They're still so young, and they're so young. At the end of the day, I mean, they both have extreme talent at shortstop or third base. I think they can both play there. I would be honest with you. I wouldn't like to move off of either one of them. I would like
Right.
to see them continue to fight each other and see let them play out and see who's better.
Now, there's one other kid down there that is in that infield mix, and that's Emmanuel Tejada. And he's looked like a little bit of the better player at this point over those two. Which one of the three do you favor long term?
Roderick. I favor Roderick long term. I think. I mean, he's a God-given switch hitting talent, man. I think, like I said, I was talking to Carlos not too long ago. But they don't really get a lot of reps off of left-handed pitching, so it's going to take a little
No.
bit longer, especially when he was kind of stored away, like we talked about. He's been stored away when he was younger. Yankees, had an agreement for a while. He was the top kid in his class, and then he came up, and he really hasn't played a full season in the DSL or the FCL. He got injured in both leagues. And this is his first real year of playing in probably about 6 or 7 years, man. I mean,
Right.
and he's holding his own for a kid that's that young.
He's really come on the last month. The batting average has gotten close to 300 for the last month. The power's shown up. The extra base hits have shown up. The strikeout rate, especially from the right hand side, still a little high. But as you said, switch hitters don't get a lot of reps against left hand pitching coming up. We saw that with Dominguez. It's just the right hand side was a little bit further behind. But you got to wonder if the Yankees are going to be willing to move any of these kids around the deadline because those are the guys that teams are asking for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, personally, I wouldn't. I mean, I have a standard of if you give a kid $4 million in IFA, you
Yeah,
you don't move, you fail with that kid. I mean, there's a reason you gave a kid $4 million. You fail with that kid, especially when the Yankees have huge holes in the infield eventually coming up. I mean, you can look at every single kid. I mean, I love Anthony Volpe. I think he's a solid player, but at the end of the day, I mean, there's still question marks there. I mean, is the bat legitimate?
absolutely.
And if anything, he can be moved off pretty easy too, man, if the bat doesn't develop that way. So
But
I
he's a
mean, these
gold
are
glove
questions.
shortstop. He's Derek Jeter 2.0, bro.
He's not. But I mean that
Yeah.
those are the question marks that you have there. I mean, listen, anybody being compared to Derek Jeter is just it's an unrealistic expectation, man. I mean, it's like every international kid's compared to Miguel Cabrera. I mean, it's just never going to happen.
Or Mickey Mantle for Jason Dominguez, which was absolutely asinine at the time as well.
Yeah, and Trout. Like
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that one. So, who else at A ball did you want to talk about?
Jackson Castillo.
Yes.
An outfielder. He's put together a really good year all year round, man. He's continuing to hit. He was the player of the week for YankeesFarm at A ball, and he's a kid that just he's was an undrafted was he under I believe he was undrafted kid.
Yeah.
And he's killed it. He's put on, man, and he's looking like a big time prospect coming out. And the outfield, I would move him up to high A and see what he's got there.
Now, Christopher Familia is in front of him a little bit. Which one of those two prospects do you like better?
Well, Familia's been around for a while. I question whether the Yankees really see the future with him there.
Mm-hmm.
Where Castillo's still young. I mean, I think he's 21 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And I would trust in Castillo a little bit more because I think that the ceiling is a little bit higher and he's younger, so you can see the development.
Who'd you have next?
I think that's for kind of their bet. The last pitcher I want to talk, a little pitcher I'm going to talk about is Ben Shields.
Okay.
Um, and Double A, he's absolutely killed it. Undrafted kid that we had gotten. Left-handed pitcher. Went up
Yep.
there. He's thrown unbelievable this year. Um, he's a kid that's exciting, man. They moved him fast. I believe he's 25 already. So he's a little bit older. Um, but he has all the talent, man, to pitch at the major league level and be a
He
starter.
sh- He sure does. He absolutely does. It looks Yankees have done very, very well in that undrafted free agent market the last 2 or 3 years. And he looks like he's one of the highlight guys. Um, I think that there's a real MLB future there. At worst, he's a bullpen piece and a pretty good one. And I think that there is a legitimate mid to back end rotation starter upside with him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think uh that he has an opportunity, and like I know Bobby Malone's favorite thing is they don't check IDs on the mound, so he's getting
Yeah.
older and stuff like that. But he's a kid, man, that very well could come up and be a number 4 or 5 starter for you and be exciting.
Would you have him just slightly ahead of Carr since they're both from the same draft class?
I mean, I think that the pitchability is there more with Shields, and obviously, you hit double A, and Carr's had his ups and downs this year. I it's a tough one, man, because you're talking a third round pick compared to an undrafted kid.
Right.
Sometimes the undrafted kids surprise you, right? But I think long term, if you were asking me, I still want to see another year of Carr before I put my 100% answer on that one.
Okay. All right. Now, did you want to touch on any of the hitters at Double A? Was there anybody that stood out to you last week?
Um, I mean, Elijah Dunham had a really good week last week. He hit 421. Um, Came up. I mean, he's been up and down, up and down, up and down between Double A, Triple A. Yeah, I don't know if there's any opportunity for him here.
Right.
Uh, so the best thing for him probably would be is to elect free agency after this year and probably move on to a different team where he might get a better opportunity.
I unfortunately agree. I was a big Elijah Dunham guy last year. I really thought after his spring training that he had an opportunity to be in the big leagues as a fourth outfielder, and he can play a little first base as well. But he just didn't hit at all last year. And he's got all the tools and talent, and the left hand bat is legit, but he got up to Triple A and he just didn't hit.
No, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And I think that's where we had our issues, man. I mean, he took a step back. I mean, he was a kid that could have possibly jumped into the top 10 prospects for the Yankees, if not in that left field position. They had a huge hole last year. So,
Absolutely.
and I feel like he kind of wasted his chance there, man, by just struggling a little bit. So,
Right. Now, going in, we're going to talk about the draft a little bit. We're kind of looking at the rotations for what we think they're going to be next year from the FCL on up with this draft class. Now, why don't you start us in the FCL and see what we think is going to happen there?
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna touch up a bunch of kids here that we
Okay.
had put a list together,
Right.
and then we'll also jump in and do some honorable mentions on some kids as well.
Okay.
But my starters in this for starting, I'll start out with Danny Flat. I think Danny Flat's gonna repeat that level there. I looked a lot into it. And he's still young, so I believe the Yankees are gonna try to grow that arm a little bit more before they jump him into full season ball.
Right.
He's been killing it down there, so I would not be shocked if he gets the day one start there. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he's at A ball, and
Right.
piggybacking as a starter as well. So he would be my number one starter there. My number two guy, I'm gonna go with a kid we drafted in the seventh round, Wyatt Parliament.
Yep.
Going forward, I think the I've talked to you about it from innings 1 through 3. They say that he holds his velocity about 94, 95, up to 96.
Right.
And then if you go past inning 3 with him, it's usually 92, 93. And the Yankees do really good with continued velocity. That's their
Case
specialty. So
Hampton being one of the prime examples.
exactly. And I feel like he can be one of those. And if he can jump on the horse and he can maintain his velocity, I think you have a legitimate, big time pitcher and Wyatt
I
Parliament.
I agree. I think he's going to be very good. If they're going to reshape these pitchers. Every single one of these kids from this draft class are going to go down to the gas station just like last year's class. They're not going to throw this year. They're going to put them in motion capture suits. They're going to put them in strength training, velocity training, pitch shape, do all that to them. And what comes out next spring is going to be what's really exciting. That's when we're really going to be able to evaluate these kids.
I agree with you 100%. I think though, like I said, those two at the top of the rotation are already exciting. And then on top of
Oh,
that, I
Go
think
ahead.
we'll go with I didn't mean to cut you off if you wanted to say something.
No, no, not at all.
All right,
I
yeah, and
talk too
then
much anyway.
but I think after that, man, we'll go with the 11th rounder, Mac Estrada. I like Mac Estrada a lot, man. I was looking at him and they had him as the number one JUCO kid
Yep.
in the class for them to get him in the 11th round. I think he's gonna obviously go above slot there. But he's a kid that the Yankees love, man. That's the perfect prototypical mold pitcher that they have. That's a little low 90s, can sometimes reach mid 90s. But if they can add a couple more miles per hour on that 6'4" frame, I mean, you might have a kid with a wipeout slider that becomes one of your top pitching prospects as well. He's another exciting kid that we got.
Absolutely. He kind of reminds me of Beck Way. They came out of a similar
Yeah.
schools, similar builds. I've read that with Estrada, they believe that there's more velocity in there. The mechanics are a little wonky at times. They feel like they can add, 2, 3, 4 miles an hour. And if they do that, whoa, they might have something really good on their hands.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I agree with you 100%. And then
Yeah.
another one is one of the Carlos favorites. I'm gonna go with Shaniel Arias. Um, that's a big right-handed arm as well, man. He came up midway through last year, and then now he's been up this year. He's looked solid this year. I just don't know if there's a spot going forward for him yet at the upper levels when we start moving up there. But he's a kid that's exciting, and I could see him technically heading the being at the top of this rotation as well. He's got a really good arm, man. He throws 95 plus sometimes, and more 93 to 94. But he's an exciting kid.
He is. He's very, very exciting. He's got some good off speed stuff. It's not real consistent. The mechanics get a little unrepeatable at times. But when he's on, he's got one of the best carries on his fastball that I've seen of a kid that age recently. Um, Good looking frame. I think there's things that they can add to that. I'm excited to see him as he progresses.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then the last kid I'll round out with their rotation, I'm gonna go with Jerson Alejandro from the DSL.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's gonna move up, a big kid, called him King Kong. He this year he started adding back on the miles per hour. I mean, last year was kind of like 91 to 94. This year it's back up in the high 90 area. Um, the only thing has been his walks. He's been a little wild at times, but I think he's a kid that was so explosive that I feel like you have to move him up and continue his development. And it could be, you could either have a Luis Medina situation where it just never gets figured out that way, or as he goes higher, he figures out how to throw strikes better, and you have a number one or two starter there in that profile.
Right. You commented to the guy I was going to ask you about the comparison, Luis Medina. There's a lot of similarities in that profile in the size, height wise, but mostly the velocity. Jerkson can absolutely throw the ball, but do you think coming stateside will help him getting more developed because he'll get more chance to work with the coaches this side of the?
I believe so. I believe it. I believe it's the right time. He will have spent 2 years in the DSL, and I think it is time for him to come up and come stateside and see what we got there. And I don't want to hold him down too long, man. I think that would be a poor choice if we see him on a third year in the DSL. It's kind of like a death sentence when you get to a third year in the DSL.
Yeah,
So I think it's the right move for him would be to come up next year and kind of see what we're working with that profile.
gotcha. Now moving into Tampa, who did you have there?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with obviously the big dog, Mr. Henry Lalane. I mean, probably the highest ceiling pitcher that we have
And have
in
had
our
for a
entire.
long time.
Yeah, he's an unreal kid. Can get that up to 96, 97, sometimes 98,
Hmm.
wipeout slider, good changeup. I mean, he's got everything that you need. I think it's time for him. I mean, I think he would have been here, to be honest with you. Probably might even start at the next level up starting next year if it wasn't for an injury. But I expect him to get moved up, because I think if I'm not mistaken, the FCL closed down on Thursday, if I'm not
It
mistaken.
does.
So he's right there. I expect him to start here and then be a quick candidate to move up to Hudson Valley.
I'm You and I have talked about this a lot, but I'm a huge Lonnie fan, and he's the one guy. outside of Jason Dominguez that I absolutely don't want to see traded because the ceiling is so high. If he puts it all together, and granted, there's been some injury issues that are concerning in back-to-back years, but it hasn't been anything in the shoulder capsule. It hasn't been Tommy John. It hasn't been any of the big bad injuries. So I just think that that kid has a ceiling of an ace. And I don't say that about starting pitching prospects. But if that kid develops all the way, that's a frontline starter in a big way.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Okay. Who was just
Uh,
number two?
my number two, I'm gonna go with our fourth rounder, man, Gage Zeal.
Okay.
I think he's a starter. I think he's going to start for us, and he was different than a lot of the other Yankee pitchers because a lot of other guys we drafted had a little size, 6'2" and up. He's the one kid that came in at 6 foot, but I think the Yankees sometimes take that bulldog on a mound, that pit bull. The little guys that are just nasty on the mound. They know how to throw, they
Right.
know how to pitch, and those are the ones that surprise you and they move up. And sometimes they become Chase Hampton, sometimes they become Marcus Stroman. I mean, so you have that kind of talent. I think he's going to be there. I wouldn't be surprised if he moves fast. He's a really exciting arm too. The Yankees got him in the fourth round. I really thought he was a third rounder.
I did
Um,
too.
so to get that kind of talent in the fourth round, I'm excited about it. I think going forward, he's going to be somebody to keep an eye on.
I do too. I think that they're, again, we'll see next spring after they go through this program. And you're going to hear that a lot today. But there's a lot of development that they're going to do in the next 6 to 9 months. And when we see them next spring, they might look completely different. I mean, look how much different Cade Smith looks than
Yeah,
when we drafted him.
I don't
So
disagree.
this kid could be that. I just hope that he doesn't end up being Chance Adams.
Yeah, I mean it could happen, man. I mean, you never know.
Right.
Once, but Chance Adams was good until he got up to AAA. I mean,
He was.
realistically, so he was a very good prospect. I mean, I feel like he was never truly given a full chance, but that happens sometimes. But he's somebody that's exciting.
He signed in the
And
Rockies organization this year. He's still pitching.
yeah, you never give up the dream, man, if you love it.
Yeah.
So, but my number three, I'm gonna go with Thatcher Hurd. We drafted him in third round. I was told if he can get the fastball a little bit, if they can add miles on the fastball, and if he wasn't injured, this is a top five pick in the draft. Like he would have been a top
Overall,
five overall talent in this draft. So the Yankees obviously see something here that they feel like they can fix and turn this kid into an elite talent. I would not be shocked if he is the top kid in this class,
wouldn't surprise
pitching
me
wise.
in the least.
So that the ceiling is huge. He's 6'4". He's from a great pitching school in LSU.
Right.
He's a talented kid, man. And I like I said, I would not be shocked to see him move fast if they can figure that out.
Right. And we've seen them do that with in third, fourth rounds, grab those kids that just come out of nowhere. I think that this kid was a steal at that point in the draft. I think the Yankees got a
Oh yeah,
very good one. He fits their profile that they drafted and developed so well, where they can add the velocity, where they can reshape the pitch package. And like you said, he had top five talent. That's a heck of a pick at that point in the draft.
absolutely. I don't disagree with you one bit, and that's the big thing on him. Number four, a guy we know very well. I'm gonna go with Carlos Legrande. Um, big kid, insane fastball, 99, 100 miles an hour as a starter.
Yep.
Um, same thing. He kind of got bit with the injury bug. I wouldn't have been surprised if he was up at A ball already had he not gotten injured. Um, he's a kid that I think is going to move, kind of at a little bit slower pace than the rest of these guys. Because I think there's just a little bit more that they have to work on with him, and I wouldn't
Right.
be surprised if he ends up being a reliever at some point. But he's an exciting arm, man. I mean, you're
Oh
talking
my
6'7",
gosh.
6'8", that's hitting that kind of speed. I like him a lot. I think he's a winner too.
Yeah, he is. He absolutely he looks dominant at sometimes, and it's just putting it the stretches together without the control issues in between. I think at worst he's a phenomenal setup reliever kind of type. Maybe he ends up a closer, but if you can keep him in the rotation, that's not that far off from what a Luis Heel looked like at the same age.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And then I'm gonna go with my last one. On this one here, I'm gonna go with Xavier Rivas, the 16th round pick. I think that had he not been injured, we're talking about a top 5 round pick.
Yes.
He was going to be Ole Miss's ace this year, man, and he's a dominant left-handed kid. He's 6'2". Uh, I'm assuming that the Yankees are hoping they could probably add another mile or two onto that fastball, and I think that we're going to be talking about an exciting kid going forward.
I think that was another absolute gem of a find where they got him. Had he been healthy, he would have been, like you said, their Friday night starter. Left hand kid looks really good. I believe he signed today already.
He did sign, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit under slot, I believe.
Yeah, same with Wyatt Parliament. Yeah,
Yeah.
he doesn't have a slot, so he probably went
Oh,
for
that's right.
150. Yeah, but Wyatt Parliament went for I think it was 66,000 under slot from where he was.
Wow. I didn't
So
expect that. I thought
no,
he was
I
going to
expected him
cost
to go
out.
slot. I thought he was
Yeah.
slot. So to get him there too. There's two guys I want to talk about on that one there with honorable mentions, on which I think will be like piggyback starters off some of these guys.
Hmm.
Angel Benitez, who probably has one of the highest ceilings in this organization as a pitcher. A lot of people don't know about him. But he probably, if he didn't get Tommy John surgery, a year or two back, I mean,
Right.
he's probably at high A, double A right now, realistically.
Absolutely.
and and I think he's going to be a big name to watch out for. And then obviously our 6th round pick, Griffin Herring. I wouldn't be surprised if he's latched in with Carlos Legrande and he's piggybacking Legrande's starts. But he is exciting too, man. I mean, he's going to be one of those kids that I think is going to move super fast. They're going to move him into a starting position, and we're going to be talking about a kid that how the heck did he fall to the 6th round?
I agree. I think that he's going to surprise a lot of people because the profile in college wasn't that great, obviously.
No, he
To
was
get
unreal in college. I mean, he was he had a pitch mix. I think he had a 1.92 ERA in college. I mean, he had an unreal college start.
right, but what school did he go to? The competition level wasn't.
LSU. He was an LSU kid.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, I'll shut up.
Yeah, it's all right.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking of
no, he
somebody else. Go ahead.
yeah, no, yeah, he's an unreal kid. And then we'll move up to high A ball. And I think this is where it starts getting fun. I'm gonna have the two kids I also think are gonna piggyback in this round, and then we'll touch up some kids that should be honorable mentions throughout these leagues.
Right.
But I'm gonna go with my day one starter is gonna be Cade Smith. I think he's earned that. You know, he's come in here as a 6th round pick last year. He's bulldog through A ball. I think he should move up to high A. Honestly,
Okay.
this week, some point. I mean, I'm not saying that's gonna happen, but if it was me personally, I would move him up. I think it's time to see what he has at high A ball. And start that development there. He's too good
He's
for A ball right now.
absolutely, he's had 4 or 5 double-digit strikeout games. There's just been a little inconsistency, but we've seen him come the last couple of months where it's been a little bit more consistent, more consistent. He has no business being an A ball. He needs to go up.
I don't disagree. I'm with you 100%. Um,
Yeah,
my number two, I'm gonna go with our 1st round pick, Ben Hess. I love Ben Hess. I mean, I talked about him when we did the draft preview show.
you
I kind
did.
of touched it. We didn't have too much time to go over it, but like Ben Hess to me, I've had my eye on this kid since the beginning of the college baseball season. I felt like he was a great pick, man. I know they're gonna save some money on that pick, and the injury concerns are that. But anybody who's throwing a 13 K to 9 ratio is big time, man. He's a big time kid. He's a big guy. It's not like a 6'1" profile. You got 6'4", 6'5" here.
Right,
And a big boy, and I think realistically, if everything hits right, he's going to be a 1-2 starter. And then really, the only ability that we need for him is availability.
right. If he can stay healthy, he that looks like a great pick. There's always some concern with that stretch fracture in his back that he had in high school. You know, if the back is bad, does it ever truly, truly get better? But if they can figure that out, they found something in him. And again, he fits that mold of the pitcher that they can develop well. They can add a third pitch or a fourth pitch, refine those pitches. That's a find.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I think, like I said, in my opinion, I think he's going to have a big time year, and I think he's going to be a Yankee at some point, and we're going to like that pick.
I
Uh,
agree.
at
Now,
as well as
one
the
more
next kid.
question about him.
Yeah,
Do you see any Jabba Chamberlain in him?
no, nah, I don't. I think he's better than Jabba. I do. I
Really?
think yeah, I think he's going to be a full-time starter going forward, man. I think you're going to have literally as long as he's healthy, I think he's a literal number one or two starter. I'm not going to go ace because I don't like to
Right.
ever throw that on anybody, but he's a one or two.
Right. Okay. I just had that question. If somebody asked me if they thought that if he came up next year and was throwing 99, 100 with a slider and a wipeout slider, if we could see him maybe rush to the major league bullpen a little bit.
See, I don't like that, man. Because then you ruin a kid, and if you have a potential kid that's killing it that way, if you would have left Java and let him develop, man, he might have been a really great starter. You never know, and that's I think you have other kids in this draft that are good bullpen pieces, especially Grayson Carter, who we drafted in the fifth round.
Absolutely.
I would rather see if you want to move a kid a little bit faster, it'd be him.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. So who did you have as a three there?
Our second round pick, Mr. Bryce Cunningham. I love Bryce Cunningham. That
So
was the
do
first
I.
kid I jumped on in our draft show. I asked Bobby straight up about him. I said, "Hey, look, man, Bryce Cunningham, this kid I like a lot." And Bobby said, "Yeah, that's a kid that I've kept my eye on." And the Yankees came through in the second round, took Bryce Cunningham, who's 6'5". I think that one of the best changeups. But the difference between him and Drew Thorpe is Drew Thorpe might have a little bit better control at this point in his career,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but he has a fastball that will play.
Right.
And that's the difference that they had question marks with Drew Thorpe is will the fastball play? And there's no question mark about Bryce Cunningham's fastball.
Absolutely not. It gets up to 97. There might even be a little more velocity in that tank. And it was the best, it's rated as the best changeup in the draft. He had a 53% swing and miss ratio on it. I mean, you have a great fastball, and has great carry. And we saw the spin rates are really, really good. And you have a changeup. You can pitch at the major league level pretty easily.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I'm
Yeah,
excited. This is my personal favorite pick of the draft.
mine
Uh,
too.
and to get him where we got him, man, I mean, I'm shocked that he was there, to be honest with you.
I absolutely surprised me that a kid, that was Vanderbilt's one of their top starters. You figure that they would go in the first round. I'm excited that they got him. I think this is going to be a good pick. I think he's going to bounce, break out kind of like a Drew Thorpe did. He's got that kind of potential to move that quickly.
That would be huge.
Yeah. So who was your number four?
I'm gonna go with Kyle Carr. Uh, third round pick last year. He's had his ups and downs this year. First year in pro ball. I think the Yankees are gonna touch some things up in the offseason, and I expect him to get back and actually have a solid year next year and kind of move as a left-handed pitcher. Uh, this was his first year, like we said, in pro ball, and he's had games that he's looked really good, and he's had games where he just can't touch the strike zone. Um, but I'm excited, man. I think he's got talent and it's a left-handed pitcher. He throws, can get up there in 97, 98.
He
He's a
has.
kid that you can see the potential there and continued growth. Like I said, I think the Yankees are going to touch some things up on him, and I think we should be talking about him in a different way next year.
I hope so because coming into this year, I was pretty high on Carr. One of the things that the scouts that we talked to had always told us he's a super athlete, super quick to learn things. And I was really expecting the secondary pitches to improve a little bit more than they did. I think there's some reliever concern for me there.
I mean,
That may
if that's
be
the case, that's still great though. You're getting a
right.
left-handed reliever that may be a next Tanner Scott. Who knows? I mean, that's a good piece though. I mean, you walk away with a third round pick on a guy who might become Tanner Scott. I'll take that.
Absolutely. You can't whine about that.
Yeah. So,
And did you have who was the next guy? You had a couple honorable mentions.
well, we're gonna do five, and then we'll do the two honorable mention guys who I think will
Okay.
piggyback some of these starters. But number five is Jackson Fristow. I
Yeah.
mean, he was having a very good year and got injured so far. I don't have an update on his injury. But he's a kid that can hit high upper 90s. He was a Greg kid. Greg talked so much about this kid,
Yeah, he did.
and he realistically was on the roll for me to be a kid that would have been moved up to Double A this year, and
Absolutely.
he's looked great. I'll be honest with you. I mean, Greg was on top of him. I watched him, and he just didn't throw that many innings. That was the
Right.
only kicker. Like he wouldn't hit like 5 or 6 or 7 innings like some of these guys yet. The Yankees were still building the arm up, but you
Uh-huh.
can see the talent there. I mean, you can see a legitimate number three, number four starter easily at this level.
Easily. And if they can refine the pitch mix a little bit, he could be even higher than that. That fastball just jumps all over people. They don't hit it. And he's very sound mechanically. I mean, if you look at Garrett Cole's mechanics, he kind of looks very similar mechanically. Obviously, the stuff is way different and the results obviously aren't there yet. But when you have that kind of clean, repeatable mechanics, there's a lot of ceiling there. And
Yeah,
the result could be pretty wide, anywhere from a 2-3 starter all the way to a closer. But he's got the stuff to do anything.
I agree. I mean, high school he could have been a first or second round pick easily, and chose to go to college. So, but he's a kid that's exciting, man. He really is, and I think he's got a high ceiling for us.
I do too. So, who are your
And then,
honorable mentions?
yeah, guys, I think we'll piggyback. I think Josh Groves, is a kid that he's starting to come into his own. He's had an up and down year as well. But he's a kid that I think will move up. He's striking out a lot of people to his innings. So he's definitely got over a 9K ratio. I think it's
Right.
11. I think it's 11 or almost 12,
Yeah.
which is huge. And then on top of that, Justin Lang. So I think coming off the injury, you're going to see him come back. Um, probably some of the dirtiest stuff. Just needs to learn command that you'll see in
See,
the Yankees.
I'm off Justin Lang. The stuff is incredible, obviously, but we've seen him for three. This is the kid we got back in the Luke Voigt trade. Think how long ago that was. That's 2021. They've been trying to harness that command since then. I'm not sure it's ever going to be there. Is it time to look at him in a bullpen role? Do you think he needs more opportunity to start before you do that?
I mean, I feel like I would have given him one more chance, and had he not gotten Tommy John surgery,
Uh-huh.
but he was a kid that I was willing. I would have loved to see what he did this year because I feel like towards the second half of last year, it started to change a little bit, and you can kind of see where maybe that development had started because that was his first real year with the Yankees, where he actually started pitching. Uh, I would have liked to see him actually get a shot this year and then kind of reevaluate at the end of the year, but I'd still give him one more year.
Right. We'll see. There's a lot of exciting arms coming up. I don't know that there's going to be a spot for him, but if he comes back and he can harness that command, and when they're coming back from injury, we saw Luis Gil's command get better after his Tommy John surgery. So maybe that is something that we can look forward to for Lang.
Yeah, I agree. And then we have six more pitchers that we're going to talk about. I'll start
Okay.
with Alan Facundo was having a disgusting year at A ball this year.
Absolutely.
Left-handed pitcher. People started recognizing the name. Got injured. I don't know if he'll be back next year. Uh, but we'll
Tommy.
see. I believe so.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, we'll see if he's back next year. You got Sean Herman, who had Tommy John surgery. He was out this whole year. I
Right.
believe the Yankees still like him. So I'm interested to see kind of where he fits.
He's rehabbing in Tampa at the complex. Brophy said that he saw him down there a couple weeks ago.
Okay. But I expect him to be back next year. I wouldn't.
Right,
I'd be
right,
very
right.
surprised if he threw this year. But yeah, if he's coming back, I know the Yankees like him. Luis Serna this year. That's a kid I question, man. I mean, unreal changeup, average fastball, but I mean the results haven't been there since he got moved up this year. I can see him piggybacking, but the question is he piggybacking A ball again? They're gonna move him up to high A? And then if so, where is he pitching? That's what I want to know. Is he a starter? Did they just move him to a bullpen piece? Try to see if they can get something out of him. I don't know. I have questions on that one.
I do
Um,
too. Obviously, the fastball doesn't play up enough, and he doesn't have the command that a Drew Thorpe does to get away with below average velocity. He's a smaller kid. I don't know what the future holds for him. If he can add some velocity or improve the secondaries other than the changeup, maybe there's a starter there in like a Marcus Stroman mold because of the size. But he's got to start throwing more strikes.
Yeah. And then I got two more kids here. Well, three more, sorry, three more. So Jordan Mendoza, I'm almost off the whole train on Mendoza. I me and Carlos were driving that train in
Yeah,
in the early parts, and he came up last year into the FCL. Command was off. This year he got injured, out the rest of the year. You know, I have my questions there. If he's gonna be able to pitch here, if the Yankees don't cut him because they just have too many pitching spots. I think
right.
a lot of people are gonna get cut, and you're gonna see a lot of cuts coming in soon. Um, I wouldn't be shocked by that. On top of that, my next two are gonna be Cyber Marte. I like what I've seen from him. He's 20 years old, 6'5" kid, pitches more to contact than strikeouts. Really good sink. Yankees love this
Love sinkers.
ball pitcher. Yeah, yeah, I love him. So he's a kid that I like a lot. He's been doing really good in the FCL. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets moved up to A ball at some point this year,
Uh-huh.
as well. I think he should get an opportunity to do that, even though I would put him behind, LeGrand Hay and Henry Lulane to move up. But he's a kid that definitely earned it if he does get a chance to move up there. Um, and then the last one would be Bryce Worker. He was our 20th round pick last year.
That's sure.
Um, Fastball, I wish he threw like 94, 95, because that slider is insane. It just
It's
moves.
just absolutely nuts.
Yeah, his slider's unreal. And if he can develop a changeup and get a little bit more miles on that fastball, he's a big kid. I mean, you're looking at a
Six
guy,
nine.
yeah, he's big, 6'8", 6'9". Yeah, he's a big
Yeah,
kid. He's an exciting prospect. I mean, a lot of people were shocked that we were even able to sign him away from Cal Poly um
right.
last year, and I really hope it works out for him, man, because if he can move in, I'll be honest with you, if you can get him to go from like a sinker or throw a two-seamer, and then with the way that he throws that, I would just put him in the pen and let him move, because I think that's a kid that could be a sinker slider kid right out of the bullpen. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, that's what I would do with him. I don't see a future with him starting, but I didn't see Bailey Dees as a starter too, and he looks like he might be one for somebody down the road. So they have had that profile of that bigger guy that they moved from a reliever to a starter. We interviewed Warrecker, Carlos and I did earlier this year, and he really has a determination that he's going to make himself an MLB player at some point.
Yeah, and listen, I see it. I see an MLB player. You can see the talent there and the projectability. The question is, it's not a high school kid, so I don't know if we're gonna have that ability to, how many years he's gonna have that, and how long do the Yankees take to develop a kid like that? I mean, if especially since every year you're growing and you're moving and there's less spots to play, so I mean, these are good question marks, coming into there. But I like him, man. I like him a lot. I do like him.
I do too. I think that the Yankees have done very well with those reliever starter. Like Zach Messenger is another kid that's having a really good year in Double A, who started off as a reliever. If they can do something with Warrecker, that slider is going to be his bread and butter pitch no matter where he's at.
Yeah, no, I don't
And
disagree.
he's going to get outs with it. So,
And then I'll just touch on one more kid for giggles. On the 20th round pick, we just took Cole Royer. I mean, there's talk that the Yankees might be able to sign him now, because they're getting extra money back, and we'll see what happens with I think they're definitely gonna have three kids that are over slot in this draft, maybe four depending on Bryce Cunningham. But I
right,
think you're gonna see Herring goes over slot, Estrada goes over slot, and Royer if he does sign. But if you can get that talent too, that's 90 to 95. I see another Danny Flat, like you were saying before,
right.
Danny Flat kind of kid where, you picked up a prep kid later in the draft. But I mean, that's a good ceiling to get, man, if you can get there. And then I put him, in the FCL and see what he's got too, and continue to grow that model.
if they can sign him, that's a kid that could come out as a first round pick in 3 years.
Yeah.
There's that kind of projectability, and there's a being such a thin kid, he can add a lot of muscle. He's tall at 6'6". So there's more velocity in there that they can unlock. If they are able to do that and get him into their gas station pitching laboratory, you know, what comes out of the other side could be something very, very special in a year or two.
I don't disagree with you 100%. And there's just so much projectability. When you sign a high school kid, you have more years, right? So the premium factor is the age, right? That's why he's going for more money. But at the end of the day, man, if you can really develop that and get that to between 94 to 96 and top out 98 and develop a really good slider and a good changeup, I mean, you have an all-star talent on your hands there, so
Absolutely. And in the 20th round, that's somebody you take a chance on all day, every day, and twice on Sunday to grab him that late. If he doesn't sign, it's unfortunate. But if you're able to bring him in, that's a mid-round talent that you were able to get in the
and you
last
also
round.
build the relationship. You build the relationship with the kid too, by
Right,
drafting him.
right. So coming up this next week, we're going to have you back. We're going to try to do a round table show, kind of going around and reviewing what's gone on in the whole farm system in the first half. One of the things that you and I've been talking about is the regression that we've seen in this farm system this year. A
Yep.
lot of injuries, a lot of players that are underperforming. What are some of your highlights and some of your lowlights from this first half?
Well, one of my lowlights is strikeouts. A lot of strikeouts from hitters. I mean,
Spencer
as
Jones.
much Spencer Jones, Roderick Arias, man. Like, I
Oh,
mean, like I said, they both have extremely high strikeout rates right now, man. I'm not in love with that. I think they both know. Obviously, they got to work on that. I would be shocked if they didn't, but. To have two of your top five prospects, striking out at those rates, that hurts. But I'm not like I can pass more on Roderick than I can on Spencer Jones, because and it's crazy because I think we saw something spring training. What was it like 79 pitches or something like that?
106.
Yeah,
106
something crazy until that he didn't swing.
and miss.
Yeah, which blows my mind. Like, how do you do that in spring training? The season comes on, now you're striking out almost 40%,
Right. Now, he had a pretty significant neck injury that had some nerve impingement, and that's why he missed time at the beginning of the year, right after spring training. Do you think that there's any way that that might be what's affecting him?
Yeah, I mean,
And
it could definitely maybe not being able to look at the ball so far deep. I mean, it could definitely be that way because I mean, like I said, I've never seen anything like that, in spring training ever. And he was
no,
looking like a legitimate possible number one overall prospect in baseball.
Baseball America picked him to be the number one overall prospect by the end of this year.
Yeah, and that fell flat so far. I mean, look, I like Spencer Jones. He is so good. And if it is based on just the injury, then I think you have to keep him. But if the injury really isn't affecting him in any way, I mean, if you can get a superstar talent to make a push, then I would move that. But there's not many players I would make him available for.
Question's going to be Garrett Crochet. Would you move him for Crochet?
But I don't see you just drafted 400 pitchers, on top of that. You have a lot of these young kids here. I'm gonna be honest with you. The only pitcher I could see them taking out of the rotation at this point, man, would maybe be Nestor Cortez, and Cortez has not been that bad.
No, he
So, I
hasn't.
mean, you're gonna go get Garrett Crochet, and you're gonna, pay all this stuff, and I'm not gonna give up like two elite prospects to put this guy in a bullpen, man. I'm just not gonna do that. Like, I don't,
Even
I don't like that move.
even if it's just for the year and you have him come back as a starter next year and you have a rotation built around Cole, Crochet, Heel, Schmidt, and whatever they want to do with that fifth
Well,
spot.
Stroman's gonna be here regardless, too. I mean, but you also have Rodon.
Mm,
Stroman has a 3-year deal with the Yankees.
right, but that there is some serious value in that deal that you could extract on the trade market because it's not a big contract. It's short term. He could bring something back and it saves you $18 million.
Yeah, I just don't think the Yankees are gonna do that, man. I mean, the Yankees have never been that kind of team. I get where you're coming from, but they just never
Right.
been that kind of team. So, and plus, Stroman, man, hasn't been that bad at all this year. He's been an average pitcher, I would say, about a 3.5 ERA. You know, he pitches more to contact than he ever has. I mean, I feel like he's not going to strike out a ton of batters, but he's going to get you out with sinkers and sliders. I mean, that's his game, man. Sinker, slider, changeup. He can
Right.
throw them all.
Right.
So I just
Now,
I just don't see it. I just don't see
okay.
it.
It's just a discussion to have because I could
Yeah.
see where some teams would call and say, what's it going to take to get Marcus Stroman from you? And if they're trying to save money for payroll purposes and they have an abundance of starting pitching, which they're going to next year, no matter what, maybe that's something you consider. Would I rather move Rodon first? Absolutely.
Yeah. So here goes my only other kicker. I have seen Brian Cashman make trade after trade after trade for pitchers, and it never works out. I don't care how good you think the kid is, Frankie Montas, Sonny Gray. And, these are very good pitchers, so
From
especially Sonny
Oakland,
Gray.
though.
Right. I mean, but they came in here and they didn't do anything. They've all looked pretty rough. I mean, I like when he bargain buys, not when for pitching if he's going to do that, then if he's going to go out there and spend 100 prospects. I just don't feel like we need starting pitching. I think we're good there. I don't feel like I need a starter. I think if the Yankees are going to invest in something, you either need an infielder, an elite infielder, or a relief pitcher.
I think you need both. I think you need a left-hand
Yeah, well,
reliever, and I think you need an infielder. I I just keep going back to the Crochet move. I know it would be silly to pay a starter price for somebody that you would put in the bullpen, but he would also solve your left-hand reliever needs in the bullpen going forward. He's a guy that can close. And with Clay Holmes, I think we need another option back there, at least for this year. Um, I I don't hate that move, even if it does cost you Spencer Jones.
yeah, I think
But
I think the Yankees do come away with Tanner Scott. Like I just think that that's going to be the guy that they get, man. I don't know what
they
they're going to
always
give
have
up.
so much trouble with trading with Miami. Every time they try to go to a deal with Miami, it falls apart.
So that's his stand, right?
Right. The
But I
one that
could
should have
see,
fallen apart.
yeah, I can
Son
I
of
can
a
see
bitch.
I can see a scenario, man, where you get Jazz Chisholm. I listen, I don't want Jazz. Don't get me wrong. Like
I don't either.
I mean, I don't see it, but I can see them saying we want to save money. So here's Jazz Chisholm, here's Tanner Scott, and you give us, Spencer Jones and a couple other Will Warren and maybe Chase Hampton,
They
and
want
that's your
Augustine in that for those two.
yeah. I mean, if it's Augustine Ramirez plus Will Warren and Chase Hampton, I mean, I don't love that because that also takes away from your if you get injuries in your pitching rotation. I mean, I think you have three question marks still in your rotation until Clark Schmidt comes back. I mean,
Mhm.
you have to worry about what are we getting out of Rodon still. I mean, regardless, you have that for 4 more years, but I just don't want to give up somebody who's throwing bullpen.
Right.
Um, you got Luis Hill's innings limit if that is a thing. That's the biggest question mark.
Absolutely
Nobody
it is.
knows. And then the last one is Nestor Cortez, man. I mean, these home and away splits are unreal. So, I mean, we have to really factor in what's going to be important to the Yankees and where we're going. I mean, Clark Schmidt was looking good to start the year. I think the Yankees really like Clark Schmidt. I
They
see
do.
Clark Schmidt as a 4 or 5 starter. I don't think he's
Mhm.
more than that. He's just going to give you innings. He's going to throw as long as he's healthy. And try to give you a 3.80 ERA, kind of a lot like Montgomery. Um, a lot of the Yankees' big time pitching talent is at the lower levels right now. Now that
Yeah,
and plus all the kids you drafted, but I like Chase Hampton.
I do
I
too.
like
And I like
Chase,
Brock Selvage a lot too.
and I like Will Warren. I mean, Will Warren, man, is a good pitcher still. I think that you get prospect fatigue when you see somebody there for 3 years, but you can't blame the kid, man. I mean, last year he should have had a chance to come up too. The Yankees had pitching needs. He should have been up here. You can't blame the kid when the Yankees have sometimes they just do things that don't make sense.
No, you can't blame the kid. And last year they put him in the bullpen in September for 5 or 6 appearances, and he pitched to an 0.94 ERA out of the bullpen. Do you think that with Warren, that is something we could see, like a Clark Schmidt, have him start in the bullpen where he pairs it down to his two seam sweeper and maybe his changeup, and then goes back into the rotation when there's a spot that opens up, like what happened for Schmidt?
Yeah, I no, just
Okay.
because I think that he's your biggest insurance piece right now that's healthy.
Yeah.
Clayton Beater too, man. I mean, Clayton Beater, I was looking at his numbers, man. He was throwing to a under 3 ERA at AAA, man. He was a kid that you have to find spots for some of these guys. Like because they're right there. They're on the cusp. So you got to figure out what you're gonna do. Um, that's why I didn't love the Rodon signing. I know people did and people pushed it and were sending him money on Venmo and doing this crazy stuff. Like I didn't love that signing, man. I feel like that kind of straps you in. The same thing I kind of said with Stroman. Like, I feel like once you start getting into Stroman signing, I like. So I
Right.
I I started coming up with a thing in my head the other day where if a player is a good player, I don't give him more than 3 years. If a
Right.
player is a very good player, I'll give him four or less. And then if they're a superstar talent like a Garrett Cole or an Aaron Judge or a Juan, you give them what they want. Like that's somebody you take what you go. Like, but I would be done with these 5, 6, 7 years for a DJ LeMahieu.
Oh, that was a
For
horrible
players
deal.
like that. Yeah, I mean, but it didn't look like one at that point. But you're looking at it because everybody wanted DJ LeMahieu back. The guy was hitting over 300. I mean, but
Oh,
at the end of the
absolutely.
day, the I think that it's got to come if a player is a good player, you go down to 3 years, or less. And if the player wants to walk, give him a qualifying offer, take the money, take the picks, and call it a day. I mean, that's the best thing you can do.
The biggest problem with that DJ LeMahieu deal is it was supposed to be 4 years, 80 million, and they stretched it out to 6 years and 90 million. And if DJ's in the last 3 months of that deal this year, because this would be the fourth year, that deal
Yeah.
doesn't look so bad.
No. And that's it. And you walk off. But that's what the Yankees don't understand is that I feel like you have to get to a point where you stop giving out these big monster deals. And I'll be honest with you, you're looking at a Carlos Rodon who had good years in San Francisco. That's a huge park. You're not going to get touched up like that in San Francisco. It's a huge park. They had good defensive outfielders that can cover that range. I mean, realistically, you hoped for the you saw the strikeouts. He does. He can strike you out. Uh, but the problem is, man, I felt like that was always a rough move, man. If he was as good as you thought he was going to be, he would have never been off of Chicago. The White Sox would have
Right.
never let him go. And that's the case, man. He had to resurrect his career, and he looked good for the beginning, and now he looks just like what he was last year. He's just giving up batting practice, and a lot of us are over it. Already it's an
I
early
don't
deal that's
blame
getting tired
anybody.
early. So I mean that's where I'm at. Like the Stroman deal, I'm okay with, man. It's 3 years. You can't lose in that contract. It's when you start expanding those past 4 years is where you lose. You lose
Right.
unless it's a generational player. Like Aaron, like even Stanton, I can understand giving him that 13-year deal. He was a superstar player. He was a can't miss prospect. He was a dude. He was an MVP. You gave him a big deal. The Marlins.
Right.
So
All right, Nick. I thank you so much for coming in, filling in for Carlos. We're gonna have you back next week. I'm really looking forward to that. Um, do you want to give people your Instagram so they can check you out there for your information or anything like that?
yeah, it's just that Yankees IFA signings or Nick Simmons, man. That's just it. And we post stuff up there about everything there. So if you guys want to find it, talks about all the IFA kids, gives a little jump down there to everybody we're linked to. Um, so if you want to follow, you always can.
Absolutely. Check him out because, guys, I've known a lot of people that say they know what's going on in international free agency, and this is the only guy that's never missed. And Nick's information is the best information I've ever had. So make sure you guys follow him on Instagram. Smack that like and subscribe for Los on the way out. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.